Hi, everyone. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. So today is November 13th, 2021, and I am back home in Colorado after a very long trip throughout Africa. I went to South Africa, I went to Zanzibar, I went to Burundi, I went to Ethiopia, Kenya, and I went to Egypt. And I had a heck of a lot of fun. It was a really amazing trip. I really enjoyed it. And what made Africa so special was that I had an opportunity to meet our community there. I had an opportunity to meet heads of state. I had an opportunity to meet pretty much every business you could imagine. And it had a little bit of everything from safaris to pyramids to civil wars. Burundi, the soldiers escorted us all around because we were on a state visit. They literally rolled out the red carpet for us and had the president's drummers play for us. In Zanzibar, I got to learn about the blue economy. And we talked to ShopRite, we talked to Opera, we talked to a bunch of exchanges, stock exchanges, all kinds of things. And it was really a fascinating trip. We got to see the whole backlog of stuff that John O'Connor had put together over the last few years. And it was remarkable to see how much territory there is to cover. Some of the highlights, I really enjoyed Zanzibar. It was great to see the World Mobile guys, Mickey and the rest of the gang. They're putting together a great game plan. There's a lot more work to do. There's a lot more effort, but they have the resources, the political connections, and the will alongside, I think, the people to make some significant progress. Burundi was very virgin territory. They want to do the national census and a national ID system. That's 12 million people. There's a lot of appetite to improve the financial infrastructure of the country, but there are deep challenges there. Only 2.6% of the population is connected. Only about 11% of the population is electrified. So those challenges are great opportunities. There were some disappointments. Ethiopia in particular was a great disappointment. Things are quite grim there at the moment. And wherever people's politics sit, it's easy to forget it's a humanitarian crisis. And there's a lot of people who are very scared and having a hard time. And we wish them well, and our thoughts and prayers go out to them. And we hope that peace can come and a resolution can come. In any event, it was eye-opening to see just the raw opportunity and the desire for new systems. And it was reinvigorating about why we built Cardano and the direction that Cardano is going. In Kenya, we met with a lot of MFIs, microfinance institutions, and we had all kinds of discussions about new ways to build credit and reputation to the entire MFI model inside the cryptocurrency space. What would that look like? And there certainly is a great demand for all kinds of things, from liquidity to stable coins to new ways of rating reputation with a blockchain-based identity system. And there's some great partners there like Possession and so forth. And then in Egypt, it was a bit of a luxury, but we also got a chance to just see the consequences of hyper-urbanization and overpopulation. About 1 million people die a year, 2.6 million are born every year, and most of the population is aggregated along the Nile River, in particular Cairo, some of the worst traffic I've ever experienced. And, great people, great heart, but certainly challenges of hyper-urbanization. So all things considered, it was a worthwhile month, and I think we'll be making some announcements about the Africa Fund. We've brought some partners in. I think it's going to end up being larger than we anticipated. And there's a lot of great investments we're going to be able to make in Africa, both on the infrastructure side as well as the crypto side, to kind of harmonize the two and bring things up. But as you know, it's a lifelong pursuit. 3 years to 7 years to do a project, and you can get parallelism, but you can't shrink those time horizons because there's education, there's modernization, there's infrastructural development, there are regressions and setbacks. And sometimes deals can survive. Like, for example, the Ministry of Education deal in Ethiopia, despite the civil war, is still ongoing. Progress is still being made. And hopefully, regardless of how things turn out, we think that that's a durable program. But yet, travel's difficult. Personnel had to be evacuated. All kinds of things are challenging. So you have steps forward and steps back, but the direction of the arrow is always the same. It's much the same with the design of Cardano. We live in such a dopamine addicted, attention starved world where instant gratification is the currency, and people are losing the ability to do deep work, and people are losing the ability to look at long horizons and understand concepts like exponential growth and understand architectural advantages or design advantages in the long term. The single most valuable thing a cryptocurrency can do, and Bitcoin did this, and it's why it's so valuable, is constructing a root of trust, some foundation where the security of that foundation is unimpeachable. There's not a single person in the cryptocurrency space who believes that when you put something in the Bitcoin blockchain and you wait a little while, like an hour or two, that somewhere along the road, a month from now, a year from now, someone's going to be able to reverse that chain and take that thing out. We criticize the energy efficiency, we criticize the use and utility, we criticize this lack of programmability, but no one ever criticizes that root of trust, and for good reason, because they understand the mathematics behind reversibility, and they understand the just sheer magnitude of trust this system has over conventional systems. And I would argue what we've achieved with Cardano is a replication of that. The foundational layer, Ouroboros, its security is unimpeachable. There's not going to be reverses or hidden flaws in the protocol. We have accomplished what proof of work set out to do for Bitcoin with Ouroboros. And what's nice is we've created such beautiful foundations with it that we understand how to do all the things that you would like to do over an agenda. Fast finality, no reliance on external clocks, acceleration through input endorsers. We understand how to bootstrap from Genesis, and also, if desired, some notion of sharding. And also, because you have that root of trust, you can use it to bootstrap fast permission chains, which are very, very, very customized to whatever computational domain they live in. So that's a great achievement, and it's one born of years of research, almost actually more than a half decade. And there's more research going, but it's in the iteration, simplification, refinement, and capstone nature. So this is, in my view, a Turing Prize level agenda. And I think the authors of the Ouroboros papers, 10 years, 20, 30 years from now, will be honored with that award because of how groundbreaking the research has been and just the sheer elegance of the solutions that have been brought to bear. Now, the computing model of Cardano, in my view, is exactly the same in its magnitude. We often get criticized for performance and parallelism, which is just a joke to me because extended UTXO by design is the most parallelizable of computing models for smart contracts. You have no notion of a global state, it's all local. And as a consequence, it's insanely easy to shard and bring things in an isomorphic sense off-chain into a layer 2 solution or into another network. The problem is, just like when you go from a single core to a multi-core processor, you need to actually design your code in that way. And this is just the beginning of that model. So what happens is that the network stack gets more efficient, you get more data structures in, your block size gets larger, your script size gets compressed, computation gets more efficient, the client gets more efficient, and iteratively, the capacity of the system grows. Now, Ouroboros has a heartbeat. Okay? So it beats and beats. And it consistently beats. That's the expensive part of every one of these consensus systems. They have a heartbeat. Bitcoin has a heartbeat. It's every 10 minutes. Ethereum has a heartbeat. I think it's around 15, 20 seconds. We have a heartbeat too. Same order of magnitude. Now, what happens is you can either do all of your work at the heartbeat, or, and this is what the DAG protocols do, you can have a bunch of work happen between the heartbeat, these kind of different blocks, and somehow they get aggregated together through some process or representation of them, and the heartbeat links them together. So it's kind of like a DAG, and then that, DAG, and then that, DAG, and then that. So that's essentially the concept of input endorsers. We're writing a blog post about that. We actually came up with that idea as a project in 2016 in the original Ouroboros paper. You can massively improve the throughput up to the capacity of the physical network layer of the system. So block size doesn't actually matter in that particular case. And then on the other axis is this concept of inclusive accountability. Galois is doing phenomenal work implementing mithril, which means that no matter how big, how much blood is going through that heart, how many heartbeats have happened throughout the history of Cardano, that you will have the ability to verify a transaction with a very small proof, meaning that everybody can run in light client mode. So low latency, high performance, parallel bootstrap, so Daedalus can now be multi-core instead of single core because it's not a linear sweep, it's a parallel sweep. These things. And then, of course, there's Hydra. And that's getting into a cadence of a 3 to 6 week release cycle. Now, there's a big constellation of dApps. People say, when smart contracts? They're already here. SpaceBuds is here. Nami Wallet's here. Every fucking week there's a CNFT drops that's happening. PAB is in the testnet, and it's rolling its way through to the mainnet. SIP 13 is being implemented in Daedalus, and Sunday Swap is coming. Others are coming. There's almost 100 plus applications that we're aware of that have a near launch horizon, 3 to 6 months. And each and every one of them has unique technical challenges. Each and every one of them is pushing the system to its limits in its current parameterization, instantiation, and each and every one of them is building great infrastructure, some off-chain, some on-chain. And we're starting to systematically work with them and ensure that they're following best practices like certifying their software and so forth, and listening about what needs to be done to open Plutus up, to open the development model up, to make the PAB better. Okay, there are 3 major updates next year: the February HFC event, the June HFC event, the October HFC event. These are the big changes, which add in lots of new things. New eras, new ledger rules, special accommodations for Hydra and Voltaire, the infrastructure for side chains, these types of things. And then all the other infrastructure being built in parallel, like the PAB, has its own release cycle. That's agile, sometimes monthly, sometimes 6 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks. The same for the wallet backend, the entire Adrestia program. The same for Hydra. The same for Catalyst and Voltaire and its fund structure that it has. The same for Mamba and all the things that they're doing in the side chains. So when you look at an ecosystem like that, what you see are the beginnings of exponential growth. You know, the beginning of this year, January, to where we're at now in November, almost December, we have seen a massive increase in the transaction volume, the number of user accounts, the participation in the democracy of Cardano. Nearly 10% of the entire supply of ADA is now regularly voting. By the way, we don't participate. I don't believe Emergo participates or the foundation in voting. So this is all grassroots, 10% of the entire supply, nor do exchanges participate. So that's grassroots. You've seen enormous amounts of increase in participation, and you've seen the birth of the programming model. Now, there's a long tail to Ouroboros-related tasks that are going to be swept up next year. There's a huge agenda now to optimize things because correctness has been achieved. There's a huge agenda to begin wiring on the infrastructure of layer 2 solutions and the sidechains. And when you project this over a 3 to 5 year period, a 5 to 10 year period, a 10 to 20 year period, the theoretical foundations are sound. We know that those foundations can be iterated, evolved, and scaled up. The community keeps growing. It's not declining. The transaction volume continues to grow. The demand continues to grow. There's a recursive nature to the system where it bootstraps its own evolution. The democracy of the system continues to grow and get more refined and more elegant and stronger. And the roots are still there. The focus on correctness, the peer review roots, the fact that the software is significantly more reliable, and its tendency to evolve the tools of correctness to become more commercializable and user-friendly. So when you look at those trends, combined with the fact that there's a continent with 1.2 billion people that aren't going online anytime soon to Solana, Ethereum, EOS, or Tezos, or Algorand, or other solutions, but they will go online to Cardano through Prism and other solutions. and you look at the real use cases from microfinance to what we're starting to see with the beginnings of a metaverse and the spatial web, what you see with voting as a service, governance as a service, and all the innovation that's coming from these 100-some dApp developers that are going to launch, and then probably 2,000 more will be funded and ready to go in the coming years. All of those trends indicate that this is a very healthy ecosystem. So then why is there all this Twitter criticism? Why is all this criticism on Reddit? Why is there all this criticism floating around? Because everybody lives like this. They can't see the exponential trends. They can't understand exotic new things, and they live in this move faster, break things mentality, and they live with different KPIs. And they define success by a price metric, which you never can win. They define success by vanity things like, oh, I don't know, how many mentions did we get on CoinDesk today, or on Twitter today, or Reddit? What are our social signals and so forth? But they don't go back to fundamentals, crypto fundamentals. And they continue to forget that the slowest, least advanced, and the first cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, is still the largest and most prominent. And for the foreseeable future, it will be that way, because it has the right fundamentals and it has the right trust engine. Cardano's trust engine is unimpeachable in my view. It's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to change. It's going to continue to evolve and advance in capabilities and speed and reliability and functionality. But the root of trust is now there, upon which we can bootstrap great high performance infrastructure. And we can bootstrap so many other ecosystems. It can be used to launch other cryptocurrencies. That's an enormous accomplishment. It took Bitcoin a much longer period of time to reach that level of stability. It wasn't until about 2013, from 2009, did Bitcoin achieve that. We achieved that, I would argue, in 2020, 2021. And we now have demonstrated this new programming model, which is the programming model Bitcoin should have had at launch. They recuse themselves from it, and they're not going to go towards it anytime soon. Even if they want to chase it, it'll take them 10 years to get there, which gives us a very long window of time to chase it. So I'm at peace, and I'm incredibly comfortable with the decisions that were made, the design decisions, the architectural decisions, and the rate of progress that we have. And I look at all the trends, all the extrapolations, the commercial demand. Things are speeding up. They're not slowing down. And the ecosystem's best days are definitely ahead of us. And I don't really pay much attention to the critics. And I don't really pay much attention to Twitter. And my plea to you is don't either. Think for yourself. Take a look at the trends. Take a look at the exponential growth. Take a look at the progress. Take a look at the things that have been achieved, the rate of growth. Take a look at the scientific achievements that are incumbent there and realize that they're built in bedrock, and take a look at how fast new things are coming. It was just yesterday when we had the September HFC event. Now the PAB is nearly out. And there's this ecosystem of developers. People are already talking about token distributions of applications on Cardano. It wasn't too long ago that people said we're just a wallet. There's nothing there. Cardano doesn't exist. It's smoke and mirrors. And now they're, oh, well, it exists, but it's too slow. And then when we're faster, it'll exist, but it's got a wonky model nobody understands. And then it exists, and then all these abstractions will be built to allow mainstream developers to come in. And then it'll be, well, I don't like it. You can never win. People dig their heels in. Yeah, it's okay. But instead, what you have to say is, what do you believe in? What can you verify yourself? Where's the inclusive accountability? Science is complicated and hard. Well, are people actually following a proper process for that? Is there a heartbeat of innovation that's occurring? Is there code being written? Are there reliable custodians working on these types of things? One of the big things for 2022 is Cardano turning into a proper open source project. Code is open source, but there needs to be a big open source governance scaffolding. Another big thing is using Catalyst to bootstrap a meta government on top of Cardano that's completely decentralized. That's happening. And that's in parallel to the Hydra program, to the Volterra program, to the Goguen program, to Shelley improvements. That's in parallel to Mamba and the side chains. That's in parallel to the Mithril agenda. That's in parallel to all the network improvements that are coming. That's in parallel to every other work stream. And somehow comfortably, that's all there. And deep down inside, you know it's just going to happen. Just like the Coinbase integration, everybody asked about that. Just like all the other interfaces and activities that we've had to push for. And you know, it's not for everybody. That's why Shiba Inu coin exists and these other things exist in the ecosystem. And it doesn't have to be for everybody. Changing the world is not easy. It's a very, very hard, complicated, frustrating endeavor. And changing the systems of the world is even harder, especially if your desire is permanence in those changes. And if your desire is egalitarianism and fairness, if your desire is to leave no one behind, to catch people up, to elevate people, that takes a really long time, and it's very frustrating and very hard. Yeah, there's so much education you have to do. There's so much infrastructure you have to build. That's why it's my life's work. I'm going to be in my 50s. I'll still be here. You'll be in your 50s, and a lot of you will still be here because it's worthwhile work. It's intoxicating work. It's seductive work. Because why not? Jed shows how to build a better currency than the US dollar. At the turn of the 20th to the 21st century, the United States had $4.5 trillion of debt and a surplus. Now we almost have $30 trillion of debt, and the real inflation rate's nearly 20% in the United States. They'll tell you 6%. That's the lie number, but it's closer to 20 and in certain product categories higher. And the solution is to print more money and to continue to kick the can down the road. In an increasingly interconnected world, 0 to negative interest rates. It's a rigged system, guys. It's a rigged system. We all know it. We all feel it. We all understand it. So the world in its current legacy systems is not doing good. We need a change. The question is, what do we change to? Some sort of Black Mirror, Mark Zuckerberg dystopian metaverse, controlled by a crypto elite, a Silicon Valley elite, a small group of oligarchs and plutocrats who are completely unelected, unaccountable, who control all your data, how you think, your media consumption. I can't even post videos from reputable people talking about medicine anymore because they may have said the wrong word and an AI filter comes in and says, well, this is misinformation for the week. That's the world they're going to give us. One of papers, please, and all kinds of dystopian things. The world that we're trying to build with the cryptocurrency space, not just Cardano, but the space in general, is a world where things are open, honest, based on foundational things like math and the laws of physics and incentives, as opposed to I promise. A world of inclusive accountability where you can check and think for yourself. And a world that's transparent. You can look into things. The code is there. The software is there. The claims can be vetted against progress and so forth. Now, the world's not designed to run that way. Never has, and it's a new thing. It will take decades to see it all the way through. And the entire definition of things, consent, money, privacy, is going to be reinvented. That's what we're aiming for here. So when people say, oh, well, what about the price of ADA? What about the price of this? Why do you care? The whole definition of the value of things is up for grabs. What does this world mean when you live in a world where an NFT can be worth more that was created out of thin air of a picture of a rock than most human beings will make in an entire lifetime? Something's wrong with the notion of value. And as we get closer and closer to hyperinflation, used to be millions, then it was billions, now it's trillions. Every one of you will be a millionaire soon enough. Every one of you will eventually be a billionaire soon enough. Talk to the people of Zimbabwe under Mugabe. Talk to the people under Chavez and Venezuela about how they all became millionaires pretty quickly. The raw accumulation of money gives you no meaning and purpose in life. And if you're willing to continue to invest in a legacy system that is built on a bedrock of dishonesty, misinformation, and a destructive engine that is destroying the environment and our meaning in life, turning us into automatons. If that's the system you want to be in, I'm sorry to say the cryptocurrency space has nothing to offer you. This is a space built on a different ethic, a different set of values and virtues and principles. And I've been in it since it was worthless. I'd stay in it if it was worthless. I was very poor when I started this space. Didn't exactly have a lot. I could go back to broke. I'd still do the same thing because it's worthwhile work at the end of the day. We all die. There are two deaths: the death before you were born, the death the day you die. You have this wave. That's it to exist. You get to decide how to spend it. So the question is, do you want to spend it accumulating an imaginary thing that was made up by people who were born before you, because you believe that this imaginary thing is somehow going to give you a great life by accumulating things? And then somehow that accumulation is going to make everything great and magical and wonderful. And people respect you, increase your status, and make you powerful and so forth. And you'll wake up every day satisfied and happy. Or would you rather spend your life thinking about the collective of people around you and saying, this is the first time in your life that you've actually had a say in how the world is going to work? We've had the illusion of a say in democratic systems, but the reality is most people in the world don't. Throughout the entire course of human history, either the chieftain, the priest, the king, the president, the dictator, the general, whoever that big title is with the funny hat and the stars on the shoulder, the nice suit, the family name, the divine right of kings, they got to decide how the entire world worked. This is the first time ever we are building as an industry technology to basically rewrite that. And you get to decide as much as I do or anyone else. And it's self-bootstrapping. Cardano has an engine within it that will fund its development for the rest of time. Catalyst. Some days a lot, some days not a lot, but the adherents to that philosophy can live their entire lives in a new economy. We have already achieved that. It's $1.4 billion sitting in the Catalyst treasury. Think about that. We had nothing 24 months ago in it. Now it's $1.4 billion. And it's only going to grow. And the amount of people participating is growing. And the amount of people working full time for the system, the new system, the bureaucracy of that system, the alternative government is only going to grow. And the money built within Cardano because of JED will be more valuable than the money that nation states build because it comes with better guarantees. And you know that it just can't be inflated to oblivion and manipulated for political purposes. And you can stabilize it all kinds of different ways. And when you have it, you know you have it. It can't be taken from you. You're your own bank. You're in control. You have inclusive accountability. How can a system like this lose if it can evolve itself and it has principles built into its bedrock that are transcendent and not dependent upon the king, the nation state, God, some philosophy? It's transcendent in that respect. That's how we spend our lives. And we embed it within the academic process, not, politicized academia. There's certainly a lot of that. No, the good old-fashioned Enlightenment academia, the scientific method, good old-fashioned mathematics, uncontaminated by humanity, cool and austere and constructive and deductive, A to B to C to D, a chain of proofs, one after another. Sometimes we get lucky and have major results very quickly. Other times we've had to get deep into the guts of it and push every single day. Hard. Setback here, setback there, but every day there is progress. And it's decentralized. There is no one institution, one academic, one viewpoint that decides the rate of innovation. At this point, it's now percolated through an entire system. 120 papers now, probably double that set by the end of next year. And that's the beginning of this root of trust, of a new ecosystem. And there are nation states willing to take this seriously. Now, America doesn't really care. The European Union doesn't really care. China somewhat cares. They actually understand it. But nation states, nonetheless, do take this seriously, as we see in El Salvador. And as we're seeing in African states, as we see all around, they're tired of the old systems that weren't exactly fair to them. And now we're here at that edge. And you can decide, do you want to continue with the old crap thing? Or do you want to go to something new where you have a say? That's why we created Cardano, because we felt that if you just get the right factors in, the right foundations, the right root of trust, and you have the right mindset and time horizon, we'll get there together. Now, if we get there, billions of people will be in the ecosystem. It'll be the single most valuable piece of infrastructure mankind has ever constructed. More valuable than the internet, because it has all the mind space, the time, the economic activity, the transaction volume. The use and utility of the system will be the back end of nation states. They'll say, why is this election credible? Because we ran the election on Cardano. How do I know that's in the supply chain? How do I know the food is safe? Well, because we use this system on Cardano. That's the goal. That's the process. That's the push that we're seeking. Now, it might take a while to get there, but we have the right principles. We have the right army. None of you guys are going anywhere. So what's the rush? Honestly, heartbeats. We know where to go. Things are speeding up. Parallelism is coming. You can feel it. You can taste it. We're starting to see so much more use and utility. We're starting to see so much more economic activity. All of the good factors are there. So coming back from Africa, being reinvigorated from seeing the demand and the real good, honest attempts to change the world, I want to just make this video for you guys. And I know I promised that I would do an AMA, a little bit of an ANA. So I'll get to a few of your questions too. But I just wanted to make this speech real quickly, and reassure everyone that I'm at peace. Nothing has fundamentally changed. In fact, I'm quite happy. In many cases, we're actually ahead of schedule, faster than I thought we'd be. And it's truly extraordinary to see how remarkable of a community this is. I said it at the conference in September, and I'll keep saying it again and again. It brings tears to my eyes to see how many amazing people are in Cardano every single day in every place I go, and their desire to innovate. Okay. When can we expect the 2025 roadmap? So currently we have a large working group, and that working group is quantifying the remaining things for Basho and Voltaire. And there's a parallel working group that's right now working on next generation technology for when we can get to Cardano 2025. Now that's going to be proposed, and there needs to be an open source project, and there needs to be a meta governance that sits on top of that in order to actually vote on a roadmap. So there are three major changes for Cardano. Those are the three HFC events: February, June, October. And somewhere in that time horizon, we'll slow roll out concepts of the roadmap. And with any luck, by the next Cardano Summit, we can kind of explain that. But there's already a lot of great things that are still to be delivered in Basho and Voltaire that I think people will be very happy with. And the 2025 roadmap is more about what future markets, problems, and concerns do we need to capture as an ecosystem as we grow from the millions to the billions of users and want to actually run entire economies. What about the PAB? Will it be out on mainnet in November? It is currently on the testnet, and it's being slow rolled through. App developers are coming in and verifying it, working with it. So it's already integrated with the wallet backend. It's on the testnet running, and we need to get SIP 13 out. And there are 4 different ways to run the PAB. There's PAB with Daedalus running all the infrastructure client side. There's a hosted PAB with Daedalus connected to it. There's a hosted PAB with a light wallet, and there's a hosted there's a light wallet with an in-browser PAB. Option 4 is the furthest out. Option 1 is the closest with SIP 13. And SIP 13 is somewhere in the November, December time horizon. So the next 2 months, there's going to be a slow roll where the PAB and testnet gradually works its way to mainnet utility. But it's important to understand it's open infrastructure, and so people can take it, fork it, and release things a little faster. It's kind of like a Wi-Fi standard. Like when Wi-Fi 6 came out, there was the draft spec, and some Wi-Fi makers like Netgear and others actually front ran the spec to release routers that were on that specification, even though that spec may change a little bit. So they could say they were the first with Wi-Fi 6. And it's the same situation here. PAB is now there. It's used. People can do what they will with it. And there's some more surrounding infrastructure that has to be built out. And that's why it's important to co-develop that with some of the major launch applications that are there. We originally intended it for it to come out September 14th in the testnet, but it took a little longer to get out because there were some unforeseen integration issues that had to be resolved with the wallet backend. Comes up, things happen. A few engineers got COVID and they had to recover, and one needed some personal time because of a death. You deal with these things as they come up. But overall, it looks pretty good. And it's, as I said, integrated now with the wallet backend, and it's running on the testnet. You said China cares. How would that be possible? China is keenly aware of the threat and the promise of cryptocurrency, which is why they banned it. They're creating their own cryptocurrency with the People's Bank of China and putting it into their Belt and Road $1 trillion program. And they're going to use the digital yuan as part of their debt diplomacy, especially in Africa. And we saw a lot of evidence indication of that in Africa. Who's your favorite painter artist? Jean-Leon Gérôme. Actually, I have one of his paintings right there. Hi, Charles. A certain professor said in the London Real Show that Cardano can only reach zero 0.5 transactions per second. No, it's not true. And it's a blatant mischaracterization of the extended UTXO model and the design of Cardano. This is what happens when somebody goes from academic to commercial project lead. They talk their book, and he's got his thing. We have our thing. There's no academic debate there. It's now a commercial debate, and people will just say whatever they want to say, and it doesn't bother me. But that's my point about criticism. It's like the script size will get smaller over time. There'll be different representations and abstractions and higher level languages to express things. The block size will get larger, and because of input endorsers, we're going to be able to do more between the blocks and bring them together. So the throughput will massively increase. And because of the extended UTXO model, it is massively parallelizable. And you can do things like isomorphic state channels. It's much harder to do Hydra in an account model, much easier to do it in an UTXO model. So the foundations are there, and it's just a question of how quickly can those foundations grow and blossom and bloom and become viable. And if you want high-speed centralized solutions, you can easily do that because you now can bootstrap a permissioned root of trust from the SPO set with Ouroboros as a sidechain. And then you can put super high efficiency BFT protocols with that bootstrap permission system to achieve high TPS throughput. So that's the value of what we've done, is creating that really powerful root of trust. And if they want to talk their book and advertise their thing, it's their prerogative. It doesn't diminish any of the academic work the particular author has done. In fact, it's very good. And it doesn't diminish the quality of his project. I actually like Avalanche. It's just people talk their books. And you always have to understand that that's the reality that they live in. And they don't really take the effort to dig deeper or understand because it's inconvenient to do that. What are your opinions on charity-oriented NFTs? Okay, so NFTs actually give you a property called transitive royalties. So normally, when you have a physical item, like a book. Okay, so I got something here. Actually, got a really good read right here. We're getting real interested in democracy. So here's Demopolis from Josiah Ober. I read a lot of governance books these days because of Voltaire. When you sell that book to somebody, so when you buy my Demopolis, the author will get a royalty. But when the secondary market happens and you sell that book to somebody else, the author no longer gets a royalty with a physical good. Now, digital goods give you the ability to have transitive royalties. So when somebody resells an NFT to somebody else, the original author of that, the original creator of that, could potentially get the royalty. Now, for charities, what you can do as the artist or content creator is that you can go ahead and say, well, 10% of all royalties will forever go to the Red Cross or to UNICEF or something like that. So every time the NFT sells, built into the design of it is a donation to a pre-designated address. Even after the author dies, it still happens. So actually, charity-oriented NFTs are not only possible, it brings a whole new dimension to NFT's value for preserving things that the artist cared about. From Tyler, get any new masks? Yes, I did. And when it comes to Colorado, I will take some pictures of it. That's an interesting bison-related question. Do you sell your bison calves or fatten up on a butcher for your own use? How's the grass this year for the drought? Drought wasn't too bad. Still had to supplement about 150 tons of hay for winter, maybe more. We have stockpiled more than that just in case. And the bison, basically, they free range, run around the entire ranch, and then they sell guided hunts, usually about 75 a year. And then people, after they hunt them, they process them and you send them to the taxidermist, and you get about 600 pounds to 1,000 pounds of usable meat, which is a great deal. And they're the happiest. Why are we only at 2 million wallets? I've tried to explain Cardano to people last year and they aren't interested in any help to the transcend. Why are we only at 2 million? 2 million is an enormous number because we were only at a few 100,000 a while ago. There's been great growth. And 2 million quickly turns to 20, guys. But anyway, the bison, they're very happy. They're free range and they just roam around, eat grass all day, use the same trails. They're as close to the bison the Native Americans hunted as you can get. Charles, that was awesome. Would it be possible to store DNA on the Cardano blockchain in the future for genetic engineering? Actually, it's a really interesting use case of private smart contracts where you can actually have a representation of the DNA to prove it belongs to a certain animal, but then you can purchase it into a trusted hardware enclave, use it within a context, and then once it's done, use secure erasure. So yeah, I imagine these types of marketplaces will exist, and it's something I'd really love to do with Colossal, the company that's building the bringing back the woolly mammoth. I still have to send Ben an email back. I'm going to participate in their Series A, and we're definitely going to try to do something together. I really like that team. Joe Rogan show. I'd love to be on Joe Rogan podcast. We'll try for next year. Charles, did you read 1984 by George Orwell? I just have to go on Facebook. That's all I have to do. And then got 1984. Hi, Charles. Any word on Ledger Live support for ADA? So that's the Cardano Foundation. If you guys want Ledger Live support, email the Cardano Foundation and demand it and ask for it, because Ledger is happy to do it, but the foundation has to give a grant to Ledger to support Ledger Live. And they have decided not to make that a priority. But there's an example of representative government. So the foundation's there. They have a lot of money. And if you guys make a noise and you want something to happen, the foundation will listen if enough of you say it. So there is Ledger support through Ada Lite and obviously Daedalus, and that will continue. But if you want Ledger Live, then just demand it, and the foundation can provide a grant to get it done. Muslim beard looking good. It's a Viking beard, sir. I got Viking blood. Do you have any regrets during Cardano's development? Oh, yeah, tons. We should have built a reference client. Well, first off, we should have done the formal methods probably a little bit different. We should have had a prototype team, just spend an entire year doing prototyping and thinking and getting kind of a nice design, and then writing a series of specifications and probably a more aggressive language like Coq or Agda, and said this is reference, and then built a commercial client that was command line for full node, and then built a browser-based wallet as the starting point for the ecosystem, and started the open source project set up a little bit faster than we did. The problem was that the protocols weren't fully designed yet. Ouroboros had an incredibly long research tail. Extended UTXO had a long research tail. Plutus had a long research tail. So it was really hard in hindsight to do all of that. But now we're kind of moving in that direction, and we're moving very quickly, and great things are happening. But there's a lot of things in hindsight that could have been done a little differently. But overall, it's actually amazing how much was achieved given the time that we've invested. It's important for people to understand we've rewritten Cardano 3 times. And it's important for people to understand that the network has never gone down. It's always been live throughout its entire history. And it's tens of billions of dollars of value, millions of people in the ecosystem, and a lot of commercial activity that's occurring. And it's a self-bootstrapping ecosystem. So it's hard to argue if we'd done things in a different way, maybe a little bit better or sooner, would we be in a better spot today or a different spot today? I don't know. All I do know is that the right growth factors are there, and the right knowledge is there, and incumbent within the science and the code are the blueprints of basically the systems of the world. And very bright people wake up every day, some working at my company, some working at the dozen companies that aren't mine that work on Cardano, that worry about these things. But definitely next year, one of my biggest priorities for usability viewpoint is getting Cardano to work extremely well on the browser and on the mobile phone, and getting a great user experience around that. And I wish we worked a little harder on that earlier, but it was just resource dependent, and there was only so much that could be done, and the protocols weren't quite stable enough to make that happen in terms of their designs. Charles, do you still use your PGP key? Yes, I do. If you can find it, send me an email and we'll decrypt it. The Jordan Peterson podcast, that'd be a lot of fun. Tell me some jokes, Charles. Okay. How do you find Will Smith in the snow? You follow the Fresh Prince. How many bison? About 500. will you have a Sunday when Sunday Swap launches? Actually, I think it'd be a lot of fun for launch day of Sunday Swap, whenever that is, for Rick and I to talk to the team, and we can talk over Sundays, just kind of like what Rick did with Rick McCracken did with Pizza Day. So yeah, it'd be fun to do that. What do you think of the Bayverse Transformers movie? I'm too old for it. It came at a time, and I just can't understand the action scenes. The plot lines are incredibly simple and trite. I'm reading The Three Body Problem right now. I always try to read a science fiction book every week because it kind of allows me to think about the future and so forth. And a big backlog of shows to watch, like Yellowstone and The Expanse. I just have not had any time, unfortunately. Hopefully, I'll have some more. But yeah. Are you still looking for an artist to draw the lobster comic? I am, and we're getting there. Three Body Problem is great. Well, don't give me any spoilers. I'm only on chapter 6 right now. Charles, how often do you check the ADA price? It comes consolidated with a market report that I get daily. Charles, do you like cats? I used to have a cat when I was a kid. Bison meat, is it much different than beef? Never eaten bison. Yes, it is. It actually is a lot leaner. It's a lot tastier. Really enjoy it. Hey, Charles, what's your favorite restaurant in Colorado? Any upcoming blockchain games that interest you? My favorite restaurant in Colorado is the Buckhorn Exchange. Started in the 19th century by a guy who was friends with Teddy Roosevelt. Went hunting with him, put all the mounts up on the walls. It's one of the oldest restaurants in Denver. And they serve rattlesnake and bison and all kinds of great things. Highly, highly recommend it. When will you sit down with Admiral Andrew Yang? Well, whenever the Yang Gang calls me, I'd love to do a podcast with him. No, I have total recall. Have you read Snow Crash? Yeah, that's a great book from Neil Stephenson. And actually, he's just on Lex Friedman podcast. And when I'm working out every morning, I'm listening to it. It'll take a few days to get through. Oh no, somebody's criticizing us on price. Solana has flipped Cardano. You're not concerned. Answer the serious question. We are not here for small talk. Thank you for missing the first 30 minutes. I think maybe some of these are actually bots. They can't be real people. Or maybe they're just crazy people. They just kind of wandered in the Cardano room. Not really supposed to be there. Yeah, I got a story about this. So years ago, I lived in Osaka for a while when we were setting up Cardano. And a friend of mine said, you have to try out these tiny bars that they have in Japan. And I said, tiny bars? Oh, yeah. There's like these big buildings, and they have these topical bars. And you go into them, and they're very small, only like 5-10 people, 15 at most can be in them. And they're all themed. So there's like owl bars and satanic bars. And there was one where there was a guy who's a hypnotist, and he tries to hypnotize you. So anyway, I went to this one block, and I'm just kind of going through, and there's like an Alice in Wonderland themed one and a cosplay themed one and so forth. And then I opened this one door, and there's this Japanese guy who's got these leaves, and he's beating a naked Japanese guy on a table. And he just looks at me and he says, "Come back half hour." I was like, I'm not supposed to be in this room. And so I closed the door, and I just kind of fade back, and I say, okay, I'm not going into that bar, and I keep going down the strip to go into another one of them. So I think that's what's happened, is that people wander the strip of crypto, and there's Solana and EOS and Tezos and Doge, and they have a mentality and mindset, and they come into the Cardano room and they just don't get it at all, and they can't really live here. It's very transitive. So that's my way of relating the bar story to this particular commenter. I've lived a very bizarre life, guys. Charles, how'd you find Cape Town? I miss you speaking, but it seemed positive. Oh, it's just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. One of the most beautiful places, incredible food, great people. We had a lot of fun. Let's see here. Charles, Simon Dixon said yesterday Cardano first launched as a scam gamble coin before they brought you in. Any comments? I was with Cardano since the beginning. I named it, came up with it. I would know if it was a scam gamble coin. Okay, Simon. Cool story, bro. Hi, Charles. Can you tell us about Legends of Valor and on Cardano? Legends of Valor, as some of you know, is a piece of intellectual property that I bought. It's a video game that was released back in the early 90s, and it was a very pioneering game for its time. It was an open world 3D game, one of the first. It's on Amiga, DOS. It may have been released on other platforms as well. But basically, it's a very simple game and had a very simple plot line. So your cousin Sven sends you a letter, says, hey, come to Middle Dwarf. It's a great town, lots of economic opportunity. You arrive, and turns out there's a plague going on at the time, so the town is quarantined. So you can't leave the town. It's a clever plot device to ensure that you stay within the confines of the city. And you find out that the city is kind of dystopian. The guards are crazy and they arrest you for random reasons, and economy's not doing so well. So anyway, you try to find your cousin, and you go to all the different taverns, and your cousin leaves little notes at the taverns, and you kind of go from one to the other. And each note tells you, some more stuff. And eventually he says you need to join the guilds of the town to make sense of everything. So you join the town guilds. There's 4 different types. There's a warriors type, a temple type, a magic type, and a thieves guild. And each guild you join, you get a skull. You get 4 skulls in a book. You can summon a demon. The demon actually tells you that the former king of the town has been deposed, and you can go and rescue the former king to bring him back to power, to restore balance for the town of Middle Dwarf. The original development team never finished the game. They ran out of money, so it doesn't have a proper ending. And I enjoyed it not for the plot, but because it was an open world 3D game, and there's just nothing like it at the time. It was completely new. Had no class system, no leveling system, very simplistic magic system. However, it did have a pretty sophisticated for its time system of health, where you could get diseases. You needed to eat and drink and sleep to survive, and if you didn't, you died. So it had a survival mode, and it was very hard to survive in the game and make money in the game. So anyway, I really loved it as a kid, and I tried to win it, and I didn't realize until later in life when I bought the clue book off eBay. It was one of the first things I bought off eBay, that it actually didn't have an ending above and beyond just finding the king, but there was no finding Sven or any of these things. So I negotiated with the people who owned the IP, and I bought it. And what I wanted to do was to first remaster and do a enhanced edition of the game, kind of like what Beamdog did with Baldur's Gate, to make the game playable in the 21st century, and probably do that in JavaScript and use Babel.js or something like that. And I have to update it a lot, like put a journal system in, a proper mapping system, improve a lot of mechanics, and then also make the combat system a little better, put a leveling system in, just basic gameplay mechanics that we've learned and come to love and admire over the last 30 years, but keep the original plot, skeleton, and design of the game in place as a remastered edition to kind of build a fan base. And I'll do that as an open source project. And it'd be really cool to have some form of a Cardano component using trusted hardware and an NFT play for that. Then what I want to do is remake the game, and I've actually written 2 games. One is a sequel to the other, and it's a beautiful plot, I think. And I do that with a AAA budget and team and engine, so Unreal 5, and really go deep and make it a top tier game. And I think it'd be a lot of fun. And the open source game can just kind of be a feeder to reintroduce people into a classic that inspired the Elder Scrolls. And there's a lot more opportunities to do some really cool things, especially if you put some online mechanics and PvP, and of course, if you have a shared world state, you can use a Cardano backend for certain parts of it, so you can have NFTs and item sales and other things like that, like what Diablo was trying to do with auctions and what happened with WoW Gold and so forth. So we'll get that done, but Crypto Bison is right now our primary gaming priority, and we're making great progress with that, and we're scaling that package up, and hopefully we can get a 2022 release. Mm-hmm. Do-do-do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you work out in Africa? Well, it was a lot of walking, but no, I didn't work out. I'm starting to get back into it. Hey, Charles, I lost my dad today. I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciate everything you do, and your AMAs helped me a lot. Well, I'm first sorry to hear that you lost your dad. It's always a tragedy, no matter if it's expected or not. And my recommendation is to read Ernest Becker's book, The Denial of Death. It's a good book, and Ernest wrote it while he was dying, and he finished it shortly before he died of cancer. And it really did help me as I lost some family and friends to death. I've lost 3 grandparents in the last 5 years. My grandfather and grandmother on my dad's side, and my grandmother on my mother's side. And it doesn't get any easier. And unfortunately, life is just that way. You have to kind of deal with the ups and downs and honor and love the people that mean a lot to you. But remember, your dad's not quite lost, because a simulacrum of him stays with you and your memories. And what you make of that is up to you. Charles, the journalists here are annoyed because you're only answering questions from your fans. Expect a lot of negative press tomorrow. What are the anti-Charles questions? I'm not sure. Also, why focus on all the negativity? When did journalism become this endeavor of the person we're talking to, we have to talk negatively about? I mean, can't we just talk about stuff? That's why I like Joe Rogan. You are what you make of it. Hey, Lex Friedman. Lex Friedman's in the chat? Hey, Lex. I'm watching your interview with Neil. It's pretty epic, man. I love the question about sex with an alien. It's pretty awesome. Charles Hoskin, you mentioned you appreciate Neil Stephenson. Who's your favorite sci-fi author? Well, Lex, probably Arthur C. Clarke, and also like Philip K. Dick. So the classic sci-fi authors. Philip, I think, did Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? That was the Total Recall. No, it was Total Recall. Or was that Blade Runner? I can't remember which is which, but he did both. He did Total Recall and Blade Runner. But Arthur was a really prescient guy. He predicted the internet in the 1950s. If you ever want to waste some time, go into YouTube and type in like Arthur C. Clarke 1950s predictions, and you can listen to him opining of what he thinks the future is going to look like. And the guy was just spot on. It was pretty amazing. But there's a lot of great authors. I mentioned earlier that I'm reading the Three Body Problem series. So I'm just on the first book right now. And so far, it's a pretty interesting book. But yeah, sci-fi is cool. Fantasy is cool too. I'm getting back into it, getting back to my passions. Got to work out though. What about you, Lex? What's your favorite sci-fi? Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney shared interest in innovation in areas of technology and finance, potential for chemistry and the partnership there. Yeah, guys, you're gonna need to make a video of us together, Tim and I, make it like a romantic thing. We're talking about, courting each other. Be a lot of fun. Hey, Charles, still in touch with Matt Sorum? Well, Matt knows me. I know Matt. We might run into each other at Davos this year. Well, next year, January. Cool guy. We were going to do something, then COVID hit, and so we put everything on hold. But we're kind of gradually getting back into it. Also, zombie lobster is a real thing, so we're probably going to do an album with Paul Oakenfold. Charles, you seem very well read. Never mistake confidence for competence. If you read any philosophy lately, can you recommend any? What update event for Cardano are you most excited for? Well, actually, I'd recommend reading about governance. So Demopolis is a really interesting book. Josiah Ober is just a brilliant guy. And, he's got all the usual suspects. He's part of the classics department over at Stanford, and he also taught at Princeton. And his whole thing is like, what is a classical democracy versus a liberal democracy, and what is the best engine for making decisions, and do you really need a representative democracy, or can you have a direct democracy with institutions and so forth. And so he's kind of like building an ideal neoclassical Athens, and we're curious about this because we actually have to build a governance system for Cardano. We've been doing that gradually with Catalyst, but every time a circle happens, more and more people will be involved in running the system. And there's this concept of institutions for Cardano forming and an expert class for Cardano forming. So in essence, we really get to write a constitution and all these things with the community. So I'm trying to look for inspirations like the founding fathers did, back to classical Athens, all the way through a lot of modern political theory. And I'm trying to predict where are some problem children, like where do information asymmetries happen, or areas where people tend to behave irrationally. There's a great book called Freakonomics that talks about that, where people would supposed to act in a rational way, they act in a not so rational way. And there's been certainly more than a fair share of Nobel Prizes in economics that have been awarded where people have identified those anti-patterns of rationality. So we're certainly looking at it. We've brought in some great people like Jeremy Pitt and others, and he's the one who actually referred me to this book, and hopefully we'll be able to say more. And in terms of update and events for Cardano, Mithril and Hydra, I think, are the two that are really going to make Cardano shine in the mobile space. And also just the emergence of Voltaire and seeing real life, a living, breathing government. It's going to be pretty remarkable. Mm-hmm. Charles, is there any way a senior C++ compiler engineer can contribute in any way to Yellow's LLVM development? Well, it's an open source project, so you should actually post a question in the repo. RV is responsible for that. We're just about to make a major surge of resources to enhance Yella because Mamba is coming online. And right now, the team is heavily involved in the sidechain bridge design. Once that's done, the next step is getting the EVM Mamba running, which is probably January. And then Yella is the next version of Mamba, and then they'll run in parallel. Yella, I believe, is implemented in Haskell, but that's a good question. I think it's actually derived right now from the K semantics, and the K framework is implemented in Haskell, but a high-performance version of Yella is going to have to be built, likely in Rust, but it could be done in C++. Correct by construction. It's probably slow as hell, though. Chat's coming at me fast. Charles, how do you stay strong against all these haters? Consider your personal wealth. How do you stay motivated? Well, first off, money means nothing. It's there. You have things. You live a good lifestyle. You eat better food. It just makes you fatter. So never think of wealth. It's just a means to an end. It's not an end to itself. In terms of motivation, hate either comes from misunderstanding or misincentive. And so misunderstanding, you can educate people and try to build bridges and communicate and create empathy with people. And misincentives are just a matter of, well, they make something at a cost to me. And if I make something, it's at a cost to them. It's sum zero. Changing systems improves incentives, and then we can be friends. Education and communication resolves misunderstanding. And the circle of people that you can convert from haters to lovers increases. But at some point, there's going to be people on the periphery that never want to change because the hate in some way validates their existence. But one of my favorite quotes, it was a question that was a little earlier, was hate is like taking poison and hoping the other person gets sick. The haters are actually hurting themselves. They don't actually hurt me. Between the input and the output, there's a reaction. And free will, if it exists, is our capacity, our ability to not let the input bother us and to change the output from that input. So when people criticize you, as long as you understand it's either a misincentive or a misunderstanding, then generally speaking, it has no impact at all. There is a third category where hate is legitimate because you've done something wrong. So there is this open question of how much self-reflection do you want to have? If you go too far in one direction, then you live in a world where you're blameless and you make no mistakes. Narcissistic people and sociopaths tend to live in that world. It's a very dangerous world, and it's easy to fall into in some part if you've been overexposed to criticism and hatred. You start just living in a bubble that protects you from all criticism. So how you sort out hate from other things is first you look at independence and volume. And at some point, if you see the same criticism from many different sources and many different people with different incentives and different levels of knowledge, there's probably something to that. The old rule of thumb there is if you've been married 7 times, it's probably not your ex-wife's problem, it's yours. Okay. So you look for those trends and those patterns. And then you have to objectively look at the criticism. Is it criticism that's personal? Is it conduct related? Is it reputation and past related? If something is criticizing you for something in the past that's been resolved, ignore it. They're holding on to a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. If something is for today or things you're doing, then it's a question of values. Are your values different? In which case, the criticism is legitimate but irresolvable because you just look at the world differently. You value things differently. For example, if you want to live in a society that's stable with a king and another person wants to live in a society that's a cooperative and everybody's equal, you're never going to align. And everything you do to propagate the monarchy is antithetical to everything that they stand for, but in your view is the right action. So you'll get criticized, but in your view, you're doing the right thing. And in their view, they're moral. You see, so you can't get past it. So the other thing when you're starting to analyze criticism from a hater and ask, is this legitimate or not? You always have to take a step back and say, are we disagreeing about facts, conduct, or values? And if it's a values-based debate, then unfortunately, you're never going to get resolution if your values are immutable. Because other people will seldom change their values after they've set. So when you have that kind of dispassionate model and enough self-awareness and good people that are willing to tell you the truth and the ability to reflect on a regular basis, it helps a lot. Now, there are a lot of tools like mindfulness and meditation that are tremendously powerful as well, especially for dispassionate reflection on things. Mindfulness, in essence, is the capacity to put yourself here, and you somehow consciously can be here, and you observe you and your surrounding, and you don't react to the things that you observe, positive and negative. You just see them and experience them. And then, because you're in that state, you can actually start making a strategy for how to change and what to do and what to improve. And, generally kind of works its way out. Now, wealth is power. It's locked up, frozen power. It's the productive capacity of society. And so I have a lot of it. And so what does it mean? It means that I can utilize that as I see fit. And you can utilize it somewhat in luxury. That actually helps the economy in a certain respect. But also you can utilize it in things to change things. So, for example, there's the Hoskinson Center for Formal Mathematics. You follow the thread of that over the next 10 years, 20 years. If I continue to invest in it and build it, it's probably going to rewrite all of mathematics in a way that's machine understandable. And then suddenly we can use AI in mathematical research in ways we'd never anticipated before. Great. But it also solves a very big problem that math has, which is mathematical proofs are becoming too abstract, too domain specific, and too hard to verify. So they need to be written in a way where we can debug them just like we debug software programs. Software programs are very collective things, and they grow and grow and grow. And could you imagine writing software without unit tests or test-driven development or regression tests or all kinds of things? You'd never write reliable software. So the point of making math written in a way that's somewhat machine understandable is your proof could be debugged with much more sophisticated tools. And eventually you could even talk about QA. So you can have mathematicians that do nothing but actually work on improving, refactoring, refining proofs and QAing proofs. We do QA right now in the mathematical community through the journal referee process, which is super slow, super stateful, and you get a lot of asymmetries there, and it's very reputation based. So we're making it more egalitarian by making math machine understandable. So because I'm personally wealthy, I have the luxury to endow an institute that over time, independent of me, has the capacity to do that for the totality of the entire mathematical community. So personal wealth in this respect is a responsibility as much as it is a luxury of asking, with the small wave you've been given between the two deaths, when the time before you're born and the time after you die, what are you going to do with that power? And the magic of modern society is we have institutions that are durable and live beyond us. So you can use that wealth to endow those institutions, systems, companies, philosophies, academic bodies, to basically carry out that research and push it through. And my belief is that life well spent is one where you've been very careful in selecting the things that live beyond you and asking how can these things in some way make the world better. And my personal values and philosophy are always stemming around more equal, more fair, more egalitarian, more accessible in that respect. That's why I like Colossal as a company. Synthetic biology is going to bring creatures back to life. And we're going to basically take things that we thought we'd close the chapters on and be able to see them again as humans, study them, learn from them, and hopefully gain some wisdom that is sorely needed. Mm-hmm. Do-do-do. See if there are any other interesting. We've been over about an hour 19. Mm-hmm. Charles, should college athletes be able to profit from their name, image, and likeness? I don't see any reason why not. This is an interesting one. So, yeah, they get a scholarship, but their scholarship is for the sport activity that they perform. And to say that they can't profit from their name, image, and likeness, to me, feels like a modern day form of slavery. And actually, South Park opined on this with Cartman. There's an incredible scene where Cartman is at CU Boulder, of all places, and he's equating college athletes to slaves. So I highly recommend that you look it up. But I think that Matt Trey were completely on the money with this. It has no impact or bearing on me for a college athlete to be able to monetize their name, image, and likeness. And they probably should be able to do that. Aren't we teaching these students good business skills? To say that only the university can monetize when they have 50,000, 60,000 spectators come to watch those athletes and they make millions of dollars and the college coaches get paid millions of dollars. I don't know about that, So it's just one of those weird things where you get paid a little sliver with the hope that you can make it big in the NFL or the NBA or NHL or Major League Baseball, and the vast majority don't, and the profits get aggregated by the few. It's not exactly a great system. Favorite comedian, George Carlin. Favorite berry, the blueberry. Any team up with Mr. Musk? Not at the moment. I used to run into him from time to time when he ran around CU Boulder. He recruited for SpaceX there. His brother Kimball also lives in Boulder. Very nice guy, a little quiet, very in his own head, and he's certainly grown enormously. Back when I saw him at CU, he was he was a known commodity, but he wasn't in the popular milieu as he is today. And he's a really interesting guy. Just so many things, so many different things. And Elon is really the front guy for movements that he constructs and delegates to, whether it be Tesla and what they're doing with their AI projects, or it be, the Boring Company and how they're spalling out tunnels underground, or it be Neuralink and they're building implantable brain devices. And by no means does he have a monopoly. I mean, other people do battery cars and other people do reusable rockets and, other people do brain implants. In fact, there's one that just came out called Neuralgate. It's been around for a while, and they have these two devices they put in, thought to text 90 words per minute for quadriplegics and shut-ins. So what's amazing about Musk is that he can live in two worlds, where he can live in the engineering world and actually do product management and build products, but then he can live in the Steve Jobs hype world and market things and bring money to those endeavors and convince people to stick around, even though the tail is long. The Tesla is just around the corner, just around the corner. And actually, they make great progress. The Model S is out, and autonomous driving is getting much better, but that's a very long tail. And it's going to take decades to fully realize that tail. But yet he's able to attract the capital, passion, and fanboyism required to do that. And then the key is just to get out of the way and let the engineers do the job. And so far, he seems to be able to do that. So Musk is effectively a conduit that transforms things. And he seems to be able to do this in industry after industry after industry. The only one he's tried and failed, in my view, is the cryptocurrency space. I don't understand the whole Dogecoin thing, and I don't think he proved any point or gained any accolades by dipping into the space. And there were many areas where I think he could have been significantly more productive and really achieved a lot. And he had the resources to do it. But, he's a unique guy. And we need more unique people. People are so obsessed with correctness or a template or completely accurate conduct. Society is made up of many people from many different walks of life. And what makes everything great is diversity. So I like having Musk around, warts and all. Would you ever run for president? No. Worst job in America. I'd like to build a new system that gets rid of the need for a presidency. Peer-to-peer YubiKey update. Yeah, peer-to-peer is coming. John Woods will say something about that. As for YubiKey, I assume you mean the YubiKey for Daedalus, and that's definitely something we're going to roll into the Light Wallet project. It's been a big passion of mine for a very, very, very long time. Yeah, I see this. Musk is definitely the stupid person's idea of a smart person. So there are some videos on YouTube that make that case, and I don't think that's true. He's a smart person. He's not a super genius. Super genius is like Eric Domain or Terry Tao, and it's very rare, and it's exceedingly. You see it in just raw problem-solving ability and creativity output. But the skill set that Musk is a savant in is his ability to translate an idea of a future, whether that's original or not is completely beside the point. An idea of a future to the mainstream and convince them that he's the proper shepherd to take that idea and get it done through some black box. Okay, the mainstream doesn't really care about the scientific nuances or the problem-solving capabilities. They just are confident. And so any person who has that ability, if they know how to harness it in a capital markets sense, will get billions of dollars. Now, if the intent is ethical, they end up basically building great things over a period of time. If it's unethical, you end up like Elizabeth Holmes with Theranos. So you can definitely go in different directions, but it's a very rare skill set that Steve Jobs had and Musk has and Holmes has and so forth. And it's really just the target and the will and the time horizon and how long they can keep the show going while they're building to that time horizon. And if what they're chasing is actual solvable, it will get solved. Great leaders do this. JFK says, we are going to go to the moon. That was the original scam, because at the time he said it, there was no capacity in the United States to actually guarantee that it was going to get done in 10 years. It required superhuman effort to actually get us through the Apollo program, and we barely got it done, 69. Superhuman effort. So, Musk has that same ability. And if he's caged right and focuses it right and surrounded by people that ground him in some form of reality that's achievable, then it will be enormously beneficial to humanity. Where it gets dangerous is when promises and commitments are made for things that aren't necessarily achievable, or they're just frankly very dangerous. I'd say of all the ventures he has, Neuralink is probably the closest to that in that respect. Drilling holes in people's brains and putting implantable medical devices, this is the most invasive thing you can do, and it's the most dangerous thing you can do for humans in a certain respect. And so there has to be an enormous level of caution, ethics, and wisdom. You can't put that on a Silicon Valley, we're going to move fast and break things mindset. That's something that's a multi-generational, multi-decade endeavor that you gradually build up to. And so the same things that built Tesla, I don't think are good to apply to Neuralink. It has to be done in a very different way. And I'd argue in a completely open source way as well, because of the nature of the technology. Describe who you are in 10 words or less. I am Charles Hoskinson. Charles, what are your thoughts on communism? It's the greatest evil mankind's ever come up with. It's a system that always converges to the same inevitable pattern and an indoctrination of people around a great degree of comfort of not having objective reality, but rather subjective government mandated reality, and a tolerance of having super centralized institutions make arbitrary decisions over resources and life and truth. And every time it's been applied, you look no further to the Cultural Revolution of Mao in the 1960s and the 20 million people who died there, or the purchase of Stalin, or what Castro did in Cuba. In every case, there's death, sadness, and fear. And an entire generation or many generations of people who are victimized and dehumanized and turned into drones. It's antithetical to everything I stand for as a person. And I think it's a very dark and evil philosophy. And it's a fundamental misunderstanding of capitalism. Capitalism is an objectively neutral system. It's neither evil nor good. It's just garbage in, garbage out. If you have just one currency and the way you earn it is through short-term optimization that destroys the world long-term, that's what you get. If you have different incentive models, you'll get different outcomes. Have two currencies, future money and today money. And the future money you can only earn by making the world of the future a better place. You need both to survive. Capitalism will optimize there. Everybody's an environmentalist because it's the profitable thing to do. Communism says that can't happen, even though we have massive amounts of counterexamples to it. And communism basically says, well, the only way to solve it is to super centralize around some sort of state to get us to a utopia that never comes. And anybody who opposes it must be destroyed. And it's always the same pattern: indoctrination, institutionalization, criminalization, and gulagging. Those are your 4 steps in the communist pyramid. And you can put postmodernism on it, or this woke cult, or any of these things. They're all cut from the same cloth. They indoctrinate people into believing crazy things. They remove objective reality. They institutionalize the subjective reality and the ever-changing definitions and power structures, criminalize groups by creating the other and deplatforming and denying people. And then the people they can't deplatform because they're too powerful, they gulag until eventually society adheres and complies. And then you end up with the Stasi state in Eastern Germany. So yeah, Jordan Peterson and I get probably along very, very, very well in that sense. Charles, are you libertarian or leaning towards anarcho-capitalist? I'm not Michael Malice, but I am a libertarian at heart, but I do understand that you need some notion of governance. So I'm recovering libertarian in a certain respect. And by the way, it says fire, great description of communism and defense of capitalism. Lurching that way is the wrong path. You know, it's one of those things that's so seductive, communism, because it says we're all equal, we're all egalitarian. It's like, oh, but and because certain people have unfair advantages, we have to punish them and give, from Peter to Paul. And it's so seductive, especially for young people who don't really understand how systems and incentives work. And they have this sense of fairness ingrained within them. And they think in a very sum-zero way. Do you think we live in a capitalist society? No, we don't. We live in a cronyist society. Definitely don't agree with communist ideals. I hate that somebody keeps saying it's evil. It just makes it easier to do so. I don't know, man. Any system that kills hundreds of millions of people, it seems pretty evil to me. What's bizarre, and Peterson does mention this, every single person, when they see the swastika in the Nazi regime, they feel completely comfortable with saying that that is an evil regime. Rightfully so. Killed 6 million people. 60 million people died in World War II. There's no doubt of the evilness of that regime. But then we put the hammer and sickle and say communism is equal or greater than, and it's evil to Nazism. Because, oh, hang on, we can't go that far. But then you look at Pol Pot, and then you look at Mao, and then you look at Stalin, and you start summing up the numbers, and you realize that the magnitude is higher. It's hundreds of millions of people. And the trauma is multi-decade, not just 1933 to 1945, but from the inception of the revolution all the way through up to the 80s, 90s, in certain places like North Korea is still ongoing. And then you say, I hate that somebody keeps saying it's evil. Why can't you get there? What's your threshold? You have death camps. You have tens of millions of people die. You have arbitrary rules, and those who violate them get punished. You have many examples of the just destructive nature of the philosophy, like Chernobyl, for example. It's a perfect epitome of how damaging and dangerous these philosophies can be. You have cults of personality. You have living dictators like Kim Jong-un. You have people that are very comfortable with mass criminalization of arbitrary conduct. And this is not hypothetical. It either happened, it's continuing to happen, or in certain cases, there's advocates that want it to now happen here. And yet you can't get there and say it's evil. But if you were to see the swastika, if someone put up that flag, you'd say it's the worst thing in the world. It's, I think, indoctrination that causes this problem. And I agree with Peterson in this respect. It's just bizarre to me. I don't like any philosophy that says some external force has the right to break down in my door, take everything from me, and then decide what to give me, and then tell me what truth is. And if my ability to derive truth from objective scientific principles is different from what the state says, I become the other. I become a regressive, a counter-revolutionary, reactionary, and then I get purged. Look no further, 1967, and what happened during the Cultural Revolution as they stormed the universities and they grab academics and put steel hats on their heads and have these show trials and say, oh, you taught Einstein's laws of relativity, and beat them to death for doing that. It's like, wow. This is the question to ask. How would you improve capitalism? That is the question. Socialism is an attempted improvement of capitalism. Okay? So they say we're going to modify the markets in certain ways to make them more equal for certain people, but we're going to let the markets mostly still operate onto themselves. And most people are comfortable with some parameterization, tinkering, and de-optimization for the greater good of society. And that's really the question, is how much tinkering do you want to have in order to have a fair society? And I think there is an objective way to answer it. It just has to be studied with fresh eyes. All right. I think we'll just cut it right there. Charles, do you think we'll live in a post-scarcity world, and why? I suspect, Mr. Major, that you're a fan of the Venus Project. So that's your homework for the day, kids. Venus Project. Normally, I do a Kiva donation, but actually I'm pushing towards Possession. And my hope is that we actually get a microfinance platform through them, coming to you soon through Cardano. So we'll have some statements about that soon. But in any event, thank you all for listening. This was a lot of fun. and it's good to be back in Colorado. Talk to you soon.